what's up, everyone? Today on Vox&Hops, I sit down with the lead singer of Erihma, Gore. Throughout the episode, we discuss the origins of his death metal growl and how he achieves that tone, what tips he gives to stay healthy on the road. We discuss black metal, how he interprets it, what it means to him. We talk about the Antifa movement and how he feels about that. So open up your pint, sit back, and get ready for the next episode of Vox&Hops.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, how's it going? I'm here with Gore from Erihma.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing today?
Good.
We had a good time at a Heavy MTL together, day 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we got a little toasted that night.
It was worth it.
It was worth it. It was great seeing some bands that I would have never thought to actually see and just enjoy it, most likely, even though I would not purchase their CD, of course, but it was fun. It was a good time.
Are you talking about Limp Bizkit?
Yes, definitely that. It's a classic band, I think, from just when we grew up, hearing all these songs, and I'll be brightly honest with you, it is quite kind of a cheesy band, and cheesy lyrical content is, the fusion of rap, and it's like kind of, you don't really believe them so much what they're doing, but I mean, just them doing the whole cover thing and just fucking around, they were having fun on stage, and I guess that what kind of brought that energy towards the crowd as well, so people were just having just as much fun with that, so I thought it was cool.
You sort of have to be like in a state of mind to watch a Limp Bizkit show when you're 35 years old.
Yeah, sober I would have been like, the fuck I'm doing here, but nice and wasted, it was great.
What's the best set that you got to see at Heavy MTL?
Emperor, of course, because like when we got to play with Emperor in Norway, it was a different context. It was I would say it's a bit more, it was intimate, the energy wasn't the same. But for Heavy MTL, when the whole storm just fell right before, and we didn't even know they were going to perform, right? And it took I think 15 minutes off their set list, and they still played the full album, and it was just great, the whole context of how everything happened, and then they actually got on, and just the intro started. The sound was better, I find, at least. It was a different context, but I enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, it was one of the main reasons why I went again, was to go see Emperor again. So
just to put that into context, Emperor played at Heavy MTL, and right before their set there was an extreme thunderstorm.
Extreme. I was caught in extreme rain. We were soaking wet. My cigarette pack was drenched. We were drenched within I think it lasted 10 minutes or something like that. It wasn't long, so it was super, super short rain, but it was so heavy rain. But it was right before they got on stage, and it just happened like that. And then as they got on stage, everything just started, and you can see actually the thunder and the lightning all in the back of when you look in the stage to the far right, you could see all that happening while they started performing too as well. So it was a good context, I think.
It's just a perfect setup and a background for an Emperor concert.
A perfect one. It made total sense.
Yesterday I turned on my phone, I was looking at the metal news sites, Metal Injection, and I saw the announcement of Frank's last tour, North American tour. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Suffocation,
yes.
Cattle Decapitation, yes. Chrysian, and Surreption. Yes. Now there is a fucking lineup.
That is this tour. I'm definitely trying to see if I can make out to the Montreal show. But I think the one of the most memorable times that I've seen Suffocation is when I saw the actual with Mike Smith, and the whole Suffocation as we know, Guy, it was Derek, there was Terrence, there was the singer Frank, and there was Mike Smith, and I think it was for the Blood Oath album. I think they were touring for that. So when I saw that, I was just for me it's just check off my list. I got to see the original, the whole of Suffocation, at least from what I think the best era of Suffocation was all these members that were in the lineup for that time.
How do you feel about, this is a very loaded question, me being a replacement singer. How do you feel about, them continuing with a new singer? What is your opinion on that?
Personally, they're pulling it off. I have nothing against that. we know him very well, who's doing the job right now.
Yeah, shout out to Ricky Myers.
Yeah, so I mean, he's doing a good job, and I think there couldn't have been a better fit for anyone else than him. It made total sense that they actually went with him to do that. So
I think I saw Kevin do it last year too, and shout out to Kevin. He was really fucking good too.
Yeah. I didn't get to see them, so I didn't check it out when Kevin was doing it. So I can't really judge, I guess, on that. But Frank is Frank. I mean, you can't. He's legendary. I mean, when it comes to death metal.
It's hard for these legacy bands to continue. You have to give them props, and I think they should be able to continue. And me being in Cryptopsy and not being an original member, I'm sort of biased when I say all this.
Yeah.
But it's hard for dudes to continue doing this for their whole lives.
Oh, for sure. And I think they're at an age where I think that they've been there and they've done that. I don't think. I mean, I guess at a certain point it kind of becomes more of a repetition than for them just to continue. It just, it becomes repetitive, I think, to a certain point. So I guess that maybe that's where you get to a point where you've done it all, you've seen it all, and you lived your life doing that. And I think there's a time where you understand when you need to step out. And if they decide to continue, they decided to continue. Props for Terrence to continue and pull out another Suffocation record. So it's cool to see that they actually keep the flame going. Never stop. Even Frank decided to make that decision of stepping down, but I understand his point too. I guess to a certain point where you kind of left, I guess, with not much options, but to be like, I've been there, done that, and maybe I don't want to do it anymore. I want to take the time for my family and to sit down and live my life in another way instead of with he spent all his years living his life with Suffocation. So
Vox and Hops is all about beer and metal. Today we are drinking, our first beer is from Maltstrom. It is an India Extra Pale Lager. So it's like an IPA, and instead of it being an ale, it's a lager. And typically lagers are longer to make, so it adds for a little bit more complex. Let's give her a taste. Cheers. Yeah, it's good. It's got a hazy appearance to it.
It's got the total IPA we're going for. I can taste the lager. It's good. Yeah.
And it's fruity, it's tropical.
Yeah,
I find it's still it's like a little bit more malty than the typical trendy IPAs that are on the market now. It's definitely not a New England IPA. It's more of almost more of like a West Coast IPA, but still being very tropical.
It's delicious.
If you had to describe this beer as a person, any type of person in the world, male or female, any walk of life, who would this beer be?
Do I have to give a name of a person? Or
you could, or it doesn't really have to be a name, but it'd be interesting if it was a name. It doesn't have to be a person you know. It could be like a made-up person. Like,
I don't know. I really don't know. I would see it as a ballsy male.
It's a ballsy male. Okay.
It's got a lot of character. It's got a balance. I think I would say the key word for this is how sometimes an IPA can be quite spicy, and it's not over spicy. It's got the fruitiness and the balance in between with all that. So yeah, it's quite a ballsy, fruity, neutral, got character.
Maltstrom just celebrated their 1-year anniversary, I believe.
So this is a straight up Quebec homebrew beer.
That's right. That's the only way I do it. Do you remember what your very first experience with beer was like?
Oh God, with beer, I think the first drink I've ever had, I was like 14. I think it was God, you remember those, like, wasn't those tornado things? What were they called?
Boomerang.
I had the yellow one. I think it's a lemon, if I'm not mistaken. And I was like 14, and I had like 6 of them, and I got wasted, and I threw up everywhere because it's so sugary as a beer. It was horrible. So it was like my first beer experience was horrible. Even getting drunk, my first experience was with vodka, and that was horrible as well. I didn't really like it. I was more a guy that was smoking pot. I was into more of the drugs than the alcohol. But as I got older, I started getting a big taste for alcohol and going more for it.
Tornade in the I'd say late 90s here in Quebec there was a big fad of these sugary malty beers, the Boomerang, the Tournade, which was like the Quebec version of Boomerang, and many of my early drunken experiences were definitely on Boomerang, the fruit punch one. So when you threw it all up later, you were just vomiting like neon
pink
colors and purple
and
vomit full of
like
nasty foam.
One had like this kind of berry one. It was like this purple red tint. It was horrible. It burned. It was a horrible next day. But you woke up and you fucking did the same thing again.
For some reason, it was more palatable to us.
Yeah, I guess it was just it was I guess when it came to like beers, having like, let's say a Labatt 50, for example. I'll give like a good Quebec beer. At first, I'm pretty sure if I would have had that before any other beer, I probably wouldn't have liked it. The fact that there was kind of that fruity flavor to it, it kind of like, you're like, oh, is this what beer's really like? And you start drinking it. And then you find out that that's just really bad quality beer because they have to flavor it with flavors because it's not really good beer. But no, I just don't know. I guess it was popular and everyone was just going with that, and it was available everywhere when I was drinking with my friends. So I guess that was pretty much just there for me to take. So
we knew it worked.
Yeah, and
it got the job done.
Oh, it got us drunk, and the next day was horrible. But like I said, you got up, and the next day after, you felt like shit, and you still went for a night too. And I'm still on the Boomerangs.
That was our weekends. Do you remember what your first craft beer that like opened your mind and your palate to the craft beer scene here in Montreal?
My girlfriend works at a place called Brewtopia. They make good craft beer. They have this phenomenal Scotch ale that they make, and I love it. And I'm not one for like kind of thicker, more consistent beers like a Guinness, for example. But this beer was just off the wall. Great. So I don't think it's my first craft beer, but God, that's many beers ago. gotta think about the time that I had my first craft beer. I don't know. I was always a guy that just cheaper didn't bother me as well, as long as I got drunk. That was the fun part about it. So I was more of a wine drinker than a beer.
Okay. Yeah.
I really tried a lot of homemade wine. My dad makes homemade wine, so I mean we're really big into the wine. So I like that. It's just the next day is really bad. So
it depends how far you go into it.
When 2 bottles in, you're pretty far.
Tell me what you were like when you were a kid, high school.
Troublemaker. I was quite a rebellious kid. I guess I had a lot of anger for some reason. I don't know. I had both parents in my life. All the time. It was never much of a conflict with that kind of stuff. I don't think I had family issues or any of that stuff. I just was just a violent kid, I guess. I liked to cause trouble, mayhem, chaos. And as I got older, I guess, I started calming down, I guess. But as a kid, I was a troublemaker. I would steal. I was a pretty bad kid. But overall, I was a good kid, too. I was not always a bad kid. I chose my moments. With my parents, I was always good. I never had a reason to be rebellious in that way. But, I was the first kid to start, going gothic in the family. I was the first kid to listen to heavy metal or devil worshipping, my mom would call it, music. And then I would draw like pentagrams and do all these kinds of stuff that my mom was just like, oh God, like it's only you in the family that's like this. So we're quite a big family too. So, and I'm the only one in the family that listens to heavy metal. No one in my family, not a single person does. So
what made you do the shift towards, the gothic,
I don't know. I think it just came natural. It just, I guess I've always had a soft side for dark stuff, dark music, and it just naturally came to me. So I really never had any conscious thought towards what made me go towards that. It's just, I guess I had this strong fascination drawn to me more likely, and then me to it. So I guess like some music, I guess maybe could have influenced that. I was heavy into the Cradle of Filth era of the earlier stuff, and I really liked that whole kind of gothic vibe that they gave with their music. And
musically or imagery wise?
Both. I think it's very present in their music. You can hear it, and it's very different than, I guess, what other black metal bands were doing at that time. They had just this core of like, and it had the evil sound as well, but you can hear it in the music that there was some kind of haunting sound to it, kind of dark in a different way, you know? So I guess that was part of my transition, I guess, being goth, but I guess it was in me just naturally, I guess. That.
Were you raised, when you said that your mother considered that you were devil worshipping? Were you raised in the church, or? Yes.
I think that's a big transition to, I think that helped as well. My father was very Catholic, and used to force me to go to church all the time, and I hated it with a passion. I didn't believe anything of it. I didn't like the way it was run, the energy, the people, these people asking for forgiveness for for things they've done bad, and think that, you know, God's gonna make them say, okay, well, it's all gone away, and not do anything themselves. Just, you know, if I pray, everything will go away and I'm a good person now. It's just, you know, just life doesn't work that way, I guess. So I guess it was a big part of my transition into my goth era as well. But as much I don't physically dress gothic today, I think it's still part of me as well today as it was back then. I just maybe had the hair and the eyeliner and the contacts to go with it, more likely.
What in high school, was there like a clique of or a crew of gothic kids, or were you the gothic kid?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, we were two.
Okay.
Whereas me and my friend, we were like the only two goths.
Is that what made you connect, or did you grow into that together?
Kind of grew that. Yeah, together, more likely. We both liked the same kind of music. We both were fascinated into something that was dark, and it just was a natural transition for us. We both discovered heavy metal together, so it was like our transition era of, like, you know, the 90s, where you're listening to bands like Korn, a bit more of the new metal, Slipknot, Mudvayne, and we just kind of like, I always had a fascination, like, I want something heavier. And once I get heavy...
What was that band? Was it Cradle?
No. The first heavy band that I heard was actually Obituary World Demise. I bought a record from them. I was like 12 years old. And I was at a flea market, and I was just scrolling through these CDs, and there's just a bunch of crap. And I picked up this, and I was Obituary, and I looked, and it was like apocalypse kind of artwork, and I was like, this seems like it's something I would dig. And I threw in the CD, and I loved it immediately, and I was just like, oh, this is heavy. And then I would go into deeper, and then I discovered To Serve Man, Cattle Decapitation, which I think is the most grotesque album I've ever heard in my life. Still to this day, I think it's too hard to listen to. Back then, I loved it. When I listen to it today, and I'm like, damn, was I really into that? You know, that's a really heavy record. Lyrically and everything about it was just so. As time went, I went into heavier, and then I fell in love with D-Side. I thought that was one of my all-time heaviest bands. The vocals and the down palm muting all the time. It's just in your face. I really like that. So I would just kind of grow deeper into getting heavier and heavier, and then I kind of maybe transitioned into, when I started listening to Cradle, I guess I went more for like the atmospheric stuff that had keyboards. And then I found out about actually Dimmu Borgir quite late, actually, with the Enthroned Darkness Triumphant album. But yeah.
When did you start like getting into bands and start getting to that aspect of your life?
I was 2 years old. Seriously, I was like 2-3 years old. I just started walking. My mom used to have this old Walkman, and my mom's more into like kind of Elvis Presley, Bon Jovi, Cher, and she had this cassette of Bon Jovi, and I was like 3 years old, and I used to like go in my mom's dresser, and I knew like where she hid it, every time she'd put it away, and it was always in the same place. And I was just walking, and I'm learning to walk, and I'm figuring everything out in life, right? But the first thing I figured out was to grab the Walkman, put on headphones, and press play on a cassette player. So it was just natural.
Wow.
Yeah. That was my first. I had my first Megadeth t-shirt, and I had a Metallica t-shirt. I was like 7 years old. Metal Up Your Ass t-shirt, and it has the glow in the dark in the back. Yeah, I was 7 years old, and I had that. Yeah.
So your parents could have been very surprised when you moved towards more extreme, dark bands. If they're giving you Metallica shirts and stuff and Megadeth shirts at 7.
They weren't really giving it to me. I was just kind of a curious kid, and I was like always like a younger kid, friends with older guys.
Okay.
So I guess that helped to figure out music as well too. So, but like I said, I mean, I grabbed the Bon Jovi. I mean, like, I'm not saying Bon Jovi is a heavy band, but I mean, it was like a quick transition in life. You know, like most people listened like whatever's playing on the radio. And I was listening to hard rock immediately. So
what album was that, Bon Jovi?
Oh, it was an old one. I really don't remember. It's like as old as it can be.
Because I used to rock as a kid. My dad used to the Slippery When Wet. That was the one that got me when I was a kid.
It was in the 80s, late 80s, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
with all the hits there.
It's probably that one, but it was like 89.
Okay, yeah. I think the Slippery When Wet might be a little older than that. When did you start playing in bands? And what got you into that? How did that transition happen from being a fan to becoming...
I was 14, I believe. But vocally, it was 8, 9.
Okay.
I started doing vocals. I would just, like bands like Korn, for example, and stuff like I like to sing to a lot. And I would practice a lot with that. So vocally for that, but my first band was Poison Oath, and I was 14, 15 when we joined that. So.
And you played vocal? You sang?
I actually played guitar originally. I was playing guitar, and then I had a work accident and lost a finger, of course, hence Gore finger. And and I immediately just decided, you know what? I'm just going to focus a lot more on just doing just vocals, I guess. And then put the guitar down. I just put it aside, I guess, and not made it like a priority thing when I wanted to start my band. At that time, I was just like, I'm just going to focus on the vocals. We already had a guitarist too. I was just trying in the band. I wasn't going to be officially the guitarist, but I was playing guitar before I decided to do vocals for Poison Oath.
Did you want to be a singer, or did like screaming come more naturally to you?
Very naturally. It was the thing I was more interested. Like I said, like when I got into I wanted to go as heavy as possible, and it was the same for my vocals. So I learned immediately to do screaming, and when I did screaming, the first thing I did was just throw in a CD and practice. I'd practice about 8-9 hours a day every day after I come back from school. And just my dad was busy with work, and he would always come home around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And I finished school around 3, and I would just immediately throw in a CD and just blare the speakers as loud as I can go and just scream and practice. Figured out what was my weaknesses, what I was doing wrong, correct them, practice them. Here I am today.
Can you explain to me somehow your screaming technique?
No idea. Everyone asks me what's my technique. I cannot explain shit for that. I don't know how I do it. Honestly, I don't. It's just like, I try to think about like what's the way and how can I explain it. I don't know. I just do it. And it just like it's so difficult for me to explain that. I've been asked this so many times, and I just still today I still can't figure out how I'm doing it. I'm just doing it.
You just open your mouth and this comes out.
And it just came out naturally. I was just practicing, and I would scratch my vocal cords sometimes, and I know when to push it and when not to push it. It really comes from the lungs. I think that was the big thing that I was having weaknesses in at first, because like I was always pushing and pushing, and then I was scraping my vocal cords, and then I realized, like, you know, there's a balance between that. Like, you know, like the wider you open up your mouth, the higher you can go get that note. The lower your note can go as well. So I was just working around with a lot of that, and I don't know, my technique, it's kind of like you breathing out a bit more, like and then I would just kind of try to pronounce words as pushing out, and by using my mouth to kind of like hit those shape those notes that I'm going for. So I guess if I were to explain my technique, maybe that's it, but still I don't know, there's not a precise word I can find for that. I just do it, man.
And how do you keep it healthy on the road, your voice?
Drink a lot of water. Honey's good. I use honey. Not to use cold water or warm, like, you know, or hot water, is to have warm water. Much water as possible. There's a couple kind of like neck movements you can do. Eat nuts. Peanuts work. Or cornflakes.
Really? This is the first I hear of this one.
Yeah, because it helps to kind of roughen your vocal cords a bit. Because, you know, it's kind of scratchy a bit, you know, drink with water and do that a bit, and it helps. Yeah, it helps.
Is there like an overlying theme when you write lyrics for Erihma? You write lyrics for Erihma, I'm assuming.
I do not.
Okay, then.
I clarify that. I do not write lyrics for Erihma. It's Casillas, the drummer.
Okay. That's something you're comfortable with?
Definitely. Because we kind of talk together a bit. We kind of like, you know, if he needs help with something, or for example, I can always like sometimes, or subjects, ideas like that, you know, I can contribute to, but I am not the main writer. I focus a lot more on the guitar. I do a lot of guitar parts and write guitars and structure guitars. Sometimes even when a guitarist has a riff, for example, I'd be like, oh, you know, and I'll throw in ideas. I work more musically with Erihma than lyrically. On the upcoming record that's coming, it's going to be kind of a world of both. I'm going to contribute a bit more to something lyrically, but the foundation comes from Joe, yeah. Okay,
and because he has like a clear vision of what he wants the band to say and represent through those words.
Yeah, well, we both stand on the same page for stuff on the lyrical content, but he's just the one that, you know, kind of has that flow of like, you know, when it comes out, he knows what to say and where to say it, and sometimes he'll explain it to me, and then I'll come out with something with it, you know. But I've never really sat down, let's say, and wrote a song from A to Z. You know, there could be something that he has already written, and I'll read it, and something will come to my mind, and then I'll write it down, what I wrote down, and then he'll kind of revise it and see if it works for him, and if it works for both of us, and then we go with it, and if it doesn't, then we figure out ways to make it best as possible.
That must be refreshing to be able to bounce ideas off each other like that.
Yeah, it's different. It's a collective thing, which I think is, you know, a brotherhood, you know, part of a band, for us to just sit down and, like, you know, put aside your ego, you know, and just not criticize something, and to understand something, and to try things, and to mold something the best as possible, instead of just like, you know, well I wrote the lyrics, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah, but like, you know, I could probably have some good ideas too, you know, and maybe what idea that I came out with is what fits it best. And I think that's the goal for us, is always like we try to like 100% fit everything the best, and always go for that goal. And yeah, if it works that way, it works that way. And if he decides to write the whole lyrics, and it turns out that it's great and it's working and it makes sense, then he writes all the whole lyrics, and that's it. And I'm fine with that. Yeah.
How did the whole Erihma project come to be?
Joe, well, me and Joe were actually in a previous band. We did this project that was working with the Carrefour Jeunesse, which is a program that helps, like, I guess, younger kids, but we were still 17. I was 18 at that time. And it was kind of like paid to do music, right? So we were paid to come up with this project, this idea, by the government. And we had a weekly salary for, I think, something like 4 or 5 months. And we had to perform a concert and a record as well. And that was the fun part, was that
I did not know this.
Yeah, it was called Clusterize. We had it was quite a diversified members in the band. We were like, everyone in that group was like people from like pop and from like rock to like all extreme bands. Like we were 4 that kind of connected together that were all in extreme bands. One was Ben from the band Slaves, some hardcore band back in the days. They used to be in the Montreal scene quite a bit, but they died out. Also, they had Chris from Endless Curse, and Joe, who was playing in Failure to Comply at that time. And that was in Poison Oath, and we just joined this project, and that's how I met Joe. It was, I was paid to go to this place and meet these people, and we just connected immediately and started working on this project. Lyrical content was based on the apocalypse. And we had to write all the lyrics and write everything, and just, it was a 9-to-5 job, but 9 to 5 going in and just jamming, smoking pot, and playing music. So I was like, I thought it was really cool, and that's how we did that. And I guess that's where it started. And then we stopped the project. It was just a project that was just, I guess for fun. We didn't want to take it to another level. And then we went and separately and did our own things. And Joe was going through other bands, and and another band seemed to fail again, and he was like, okay, he's like, fuck it, I'm fed up of this, and he's like, I'm gonna find the people that I want to work with, and we're just gonna do a record. And initially I wasn't supposed to be in Erihma. It was only supposed to do the record because I had 2 other bands at that time. I was with Poison Oath and War Ignition, and we were picking up, War Ignition was picking up a lot more than Poison Oath at that time, and I just found it hard to throw in a third band. It was just like, I was like, I like a little too much memorization of lyrics here, and I was working full time at a job. To find the time and to fit everything in, it was a kind of a hectic schedule. And then I decided one time I didn't want to do these 2 other bands anymore, and I felt like Joe's proposition for his band felt like it fit me most into my personal taste. So then, and I told him, I called him up one day and I says, let's do this. Let's see where it goes. And here we are today, 10 years later.
Wow. And so when did the transition happen from goth into like more black metal? Because it's more symphonic, but Erihma's not necessarily like a symphonic black metal band. It's more like a death metal black metal band, in my opinion.
It's if I showed you the sequences clearly just for Rain Through Mortality, I mean, if ever you get the chance with Chris, just ask Chris, if he ever has it, just mute everything and just listen to the sequences. It's a hell of a lot more orchestrated than people think. I think because once we mold everything together, it kind of like you can't really hear what really is going on. If it's just the keyboards, there's a lot. There's like, especially Rain. Rain was very like we had Joe from Silverwing Studios.
Yeah.
From Blackguard.
Yeah, shout out to him.
Yeah. And he did the keyboards for us, kind of last minute, because we had another guy that was doing it, and originally it was a friend of Chris's actually. He referred us to him. And we went to work with him, and he had a kid, and he got a new job, and it was too much for him to do, and he had to pull out. And he had 3 songs in that he did that we kept from him that he completed, and we're going to keep these ones, and the rest we'll do with Joe. But when we got Joe to do it, I think it became a lot more orchestrated in that sense, because I mean, we know how he works.
It's just his background,
his style,
too.
and his style, and I think that's what made our symphonic sound more likely than compared to Thesis or Erkala. And Erkala was like more just straight in keyboard, just it wasn't overly a bit like Emperor, where it's not like over orchestration, or
it's just like a texture that's being added.
Yeah.
If you could book a dream tour for Erihma and 2 other bands, who would be on that tour?
Dead or alive?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Bathory would be something I would definitely like to see live. That'd be cool. to do. And I think one that makes sense for Erihma, especially me and Joe personally, would be Cradle of Filth. So yeah, it would be Cradle of Filth and Bathory.
That would be a sick tour. Yeah.
That would be a nice tour. Yeah,
that'd be huge.
Yeah, yes, it would. It would sell out every night, pretty much.
Out of all the gigs that you've played, what is the best Erihma show?
I'd say recent one we did in Norway, the Inferno Fest. The whole context and everything that was with that, it was our first time in Europe. Energy was different, the city was different, everything was different, and we were so used to touring the States that at some time, it's not because we didn't have any good shows in the States. We had tons of good shows in the States, but there's something magical about that place, I guess, that just connected for us, and we had a really good crowd. We played very well, and we played 4 songs. Yes, 4 songs, yes. But, like, we just didn't focus on the crowd, but we just were in the zone, and the light show was really good, and I really liked, like, how the crowd was a lot more, like, attentive to, like, the music itself and not always thrashing. So it was different for us because we're a bit more of a heavier band than most of the bands that were there. There were some that were a lot more atmospheric, I guess, or that kind of energy the bands were giving. Erihma just gave something different, I guess, and it was a bit more punishing, but the crowd wasn't really we're like doing the moshing and all that kind of stuff, you know, and it was different, you know, but it was a good show for us. I really liked it. Yeah,
Inferno Fest in Norway, for those of you listening, is probably the biggest festival in Norway, and it is primarily a black metal, focused on black metal music, and being in Norway, in the home of black metal, you know, that's
what I was saying about the magic part. Yeah,
the starting point of black metal. So that must have been interesting to perform there for the first time.
Yeah, and it was our first time in Europe. It was actually my first time in a plane too. I've never traveled in a plane. Yeah, so this is my first time witnessing a plane, sleeping in airports, which sucks. So for the future bands that, you know, that are going to want to do the traveling to Europe and stuff like that, yeah, the traveling part sucks, but everything else is good. Once you're there, you're there. It's great.
I always dread the airplane part, and then once I'm there, I just fall on autopilot and just sort of zone out.
Waiting game. Shit, we got, like, we had a delay with the plane on our way back, and, like, we had to stay an extra night in Norway, which was I was okay with that, and I was like, yeah, the hotel was really good. So it was a really nice place, and everything was great about that. Next day we go, and we're stuck in Portugal for 32 hours. So it was long. We were in an airport, and it was so long. And because of the time we showed up there, if we were to get a hotel, we would have to leave by 11 anyways that day. And it's like, well, I got to take the hotel. Well, I'm there till 11 the next day, and my flight was at 9 o'clock that night. No, so I was like, there's no point. So we had to stay in the airport and sleep on really crappy chairs, but it was worth it though.
You remember those 4 songs?
Yes.
Keep that in mind. Why 4 songs? Is it good?
Well, we had a set frame, you know, then we had a time frame, I guess, for the set that we were told 45 minutes. And since we always choose to do Metempsychosis, the 10-minute song.
Okay. Yeah.
So it takes a big gap. And then with the songs we've chose, I guess, we just 2 songs were 20 minutes with the transitions that we had, the kind of intro, outro into the songs. And we decided to do, for the first time, we played Saunter for the first time. That was the first time we ever did that. It's just an instrumental song that we have in Rain. It's just straight up, just no vocals, nothing. And we kind of, it was all the sequences too, so we were like, well, let's figure out something and jam to it and make it like part of like an intro. And it's kind of like a battle song pretty much, you know, going to war, marching kind of intro. So yeah, we decided to do that for the first time. We've never ever played that one live, so that was cool to do that one.
It's like taking a gamble.
Yeah, we were
huge
like,
festival.
we were like, see if this works. And yeah, it's just kind of like, you know, the whole marching kind of like that pounding sound that it gave, man. It was just like, it man, it pumped all of us up, you know, and we were like, oh, we're ready, you know, let's do this, you know.
It's amazing.
It was like going to war, you know. That's all I can say.
What is your best tour story? Like a story that, you know, you come home from tour and something amazing has happened that no one will believe and you can't wait to share.
It's more just like, I guess, I don't know if there was anything really crazy. I would say we had some funny stuff happen. One of which where we're in Fredericton and we're playing this little bar called the Capitol on a Monday night. And it was the last show of that weekend run we did in the Maritimes when we came back from the Abigail William tour. And I was discovering this new smoke machine, and it was quite intense. So I didn't know the intensity of it that well, and smoked the fucking place up. Had the firemen come, and they opened up. Yeah. They came, and everyone left, and it was so awkward because we're performing and we're still playing, and then everyone just leaving, and I was like, "Fuck, are we that bad, man? Like, do we fucking suck, or what is going on?" And I'm still headbanging, and I can notice that it's quite smoky in here. And the bar guy is just like raising up his horns. He didn't care what was going on. He was just like, "This is so awesome. This is so metal." And then I just had the firemen coming in front of me and looking at me like, "What the fuck? You know, you guys do?" So we're still performing. It was in March sometime. Yeah, mid-March.
So it's still cold.
It's still cold outside, and I have my costume on. And she's like, "Yeah, you guys gotta get out. We gotta evacuate the smoke." So we're going outside, and as we're going outside, everyone's just there, and they're all chanting, and they're all freaking out, and they're all like, "Man, that's the coolest, the most memorial show I've ever seen, man. A band come and smoke the fucking place, and they're still fucking playing, and they don't fucking care."
That's amazing.
I was like, well, it's not because I don't fucking care. It's just I wasn't really sure what the fuck was going on either, so...
I was still... my set was still going on. No one told me to stop.
I didn't stop. I was just like, it's going. It's going. And once you're there, you're there. You just keep it going.
What keeps you sane on tour?
Relaxation, I guess. I try to, as much as possible. I try so much, man. And sometimes the party sometimes can get a little hectic, chaotic at times. I think crazy party times that we had was with Panzerfaust, the tour we had with Panzerfaust, and those guys.
Shout out to Panzerfaust. Love you, boys.
Yeah. Oh, God. Sudbury, we trashed a hotel, so that wasn't... It was a good time, but I mean, you know, I felt bad for the guy. Mark, poor Mark Howey. We're sorry, Mark, but... You know.
Oh, he's chill, yeah. Shout out to Mark.
Yeah.
The asylum.
The asylum. We trashed it. But, you know, he was in for it as well. He was all about it, too. He was just like, I get it, man. So, it was cool. Yeah. There's been a lot of just, like, party situations, but, like, Fredericton was quite crazy. Driving through Flint was fucking insane, but nothing bad happened, so yeah, at least that.
Flint, Michigan, yeah. You don't pull over there?
No, people don't go there, and we went there.
Well, you played in Flint?
Yeah, we did, at the Machine Shop. Sold out show at Mushroom Head. It was fantastic. Yeah. There was 560 people, I think. It was sold out. It was insane. The bar owner was just insane. Everyone's insane there. It's just such an insane place. We had like this little trailer in the back. It was so ghetto for like our little, you know, green room. It was just this trailer that was our own, you know, and it's just like we went there hanging out with J-Man. We were drinking with J-Man, just, you know, shooting the shit. But yeah, it was insane. But nothing crazy, like, you know, knowing of what place this is. It was nothing bad or anything happened, but
because it is supposed to be the most dangerous city.
Oh, it is definitely
of the states.
Oh yeah, you can see how ghetto it is. Yeah, it's totally dangerous, and you can feel that. And when you talk to the people, attitude, I guess, is a bit different. They're very cautious of everything, and they watch everything, and everyone's got a gun on them. Everyone's, you know, the violence can happen by a snap of the fingers in a place like that. But everyone was there to have a good time, listen to metal and headbang. That's what happened, and nothing else happened, so we were happy about that. But yeah, and we also played in Compton too, so...
Really?
Yeah, straight up in Compton.
Different crowd?
different crowd, heroin addicts everywhere. It was fucked up. We were yelling at the guy, Jeff of Abigail, was yelling at this crackhead place because we were parked in front of his apparently reserved parking for his people who are purchasing drugs. And, when we were in Compton, we were told every time we were going to the van, we were handed a knife and said, like, keep cautious of this and be aware.
You were handed a knife?
Every time.
From the club?
No, not from the club, but our friends,
Wow.
Yeah, that were there. They would just give us a knife and just be like, be cautious when you go out there. Like, just anything can happen, We're like, just going to the van from the venue. And we were literally, like, parked pretty much in front of the venue. So, yeah. So, I mean, they're the craziest places that, something like of a tourist story could have happened, but nothing happened. So
that's good.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing because they were very dangerous areas. But we could have had some good stories there too. Though, but
there we go.
Who knows? Maybe we might go back in the future.
Our next beer today is the Russian Imperial Stout, Stout Imperial Russe, from Brasserie Dunham, which comes from Dunham, Quebec, which is a tiny little town on the South Shore. And this is one of my go-to beers because it is always constantly delicious. It never changes in quality because Dunham is just that good. It's a 9% beer. And let's hear let's see what it's like there. It smells sweet and almost a little bit like coffee.
That's the thing I got from it. I got, like, when I was smelling it, I get that kind of coffee smell, but you don't get so much the coffee taste. But
yeah, it's sweet, but it's not like it's sugary.
For a 9% beer, it's not that overpowering, which is good.
It's malty.
It's not like the Mozit.
Chocolatey. Do you have like a local favorite brewery? Or beer in general?
I like a lot of Belgian beer.
Okay.
So it's not like a local brewery. So
is there one in particular, or like?
Not really. No. I like kind of white beers.
Okay. So like the Belgian white style, the Heffen.
Yep. Or the Holgarden, which is more of the commercial, I guess, in their beers.
I used to love it back in the day. You'd go into the bar and you'd order a Hogarden. They'd serve it to you in that huge glass. Which was really a selling point for me, but I'm sure it's just the same amount of beer as in a normal glass. But me being a little kid, I was like, oh my God, it's so much beer.
Such a big beer. I'm so happy.
I've stolen one. I have it at home. Let's talk about black metal.
All right.
Me being from the death metal world, I don't know that much about it. So I'm hoping that you can shed some light on it for me. How do you explain black metal to people who are not familiar with the genre?
It's radical. It's chaotic. It's a lifestyle. I think that's the difference between black metal to me and death metal. For example, it's quite a lifestyle. I guess in more of like a lyrical view and everything, and how, like, I guess freedom and liberation is kind of a key subject usually in black metal bands, which, well, it's usually on a satanic agenda, but I mean it's all relevant to the same thing of it being freedom. It's opposition of many things against a lot of things. Could be politics, religion, racism, anything. Black metal has always been kind of a more atmospheric kind of music that you feel more, I guess, maybe more like kind of focused on emotion more than like just speed and technique. I mean, most bands like Burzum, for example, have the shittiest recording sound ever, but the atmosphere and the feeling and the emotion that's give out from something like that, it can be repetitive even. I mean, some of the riffs, it's the same riff for like 4 or 5 minutes, and in death metal you've already had like maybe 7 riffs in that time frame. So I guess black metal, I guess to me, it's at least to me it is in that way. It may be different to other people as well, but yeah, I view black metal as more of a lifestyle than just a musical genre, I guess.
You mentioned the recording quality of like Burzum, for example. What is it about the early black metal recordings that are so sonically peculiar? You know, I've tried to get into black metal. It always sort of just puts me off the production.
I guess it's kind of more that kind of I don't give a fuck attitude, you know, that rebellious kind of youth against something, you know, like not to go into the path of the mainstream and to have like opposition towards that. I think, you know, like, you know, for example, the 80s, they had like all the electronic drums and all this kind of stuff, and triggers started happening. Even in the 90s, triggers were kind of becoming something, clean recording. And I guess going against that, you know, kind of gave it that kind of sound and that grimness, I guess, to music, that when people hear it, it's very eerie. It's very draining, you know. It's hard to understand. It's harsh. It's raw. It's chaotic. You know, it's not making so much sense to some people. It's primitive, I guess, and that's what I would consider a lot of black metal is.
Do you think that there are such thing as true black metal bands?
No. I think black metal is just black metal. There's no something that's superior to others. I think that's just part of people's ego if they're trying to, like, you know, this is what it really is. It's just, you know, you got the elite crowd that just really think that, like, so Burzum is real black metal. This is not. Black metal has evolved. It kind of spread to the masses, which means that it's living and it's still there, which is a good thing. So it's not dead. So if that's the way it goes, and that's the way it goes, and I'm happy by that. I mean, Erihma, for example, is a band I think that takes elements of what I would consider that most people would be like, oh, well, that's not what traditional black metal does. But we don't care. I think that's what most people don't understand what maybe black metal is that, like, it's, you know, for example, I don't know, you can listen to bands like The Devil's Blood. I think that band's even more black metal than some black metal bands call themselves black metal, you know what I mean?
So it doesn't bother you that bands like Death Haven is like claiming that they're black metal?
Well, you know, I think that I wouldn't call it black metal. I think that they have elements of black metal. You know, for example, I consider Erihma the same. You know, I don't consider Erihma a whole black metal band. And when people are like, oh, black metal, you know, Erihma's black metal, I'm like, no. you think it's black metal, but because we represent elements of, and I think even in Death Haven, you got some riffs, you'll listen to the guitar riff, and that's maybe totally something a black metal band would use as well. But they'll look at the album cover and kind of that, I guess what people are calling it, that hipster vibe, I guess. But I never thought they were black metal either, so their lyrical content is maybe not based on a satanic agenda like most black metal bands do.
What do you think about the Antifa movement?
I think it's stupid. I think it's anti-fascist people acting in fascist ways, which is just horrible. I think they're just pushing it a little too much. And I think, like, you know, like, these people are judging something from what media is covering or whatever, some bullshit somebody's stirring up, you know, like, oh, this person is a racist person or this and this is that. They're, you know, especially with the black metal movement, they're using political and religious and racist stuff into black metal when black metal is totally the opposition of that, which makes no sense to me. And you could have some bands that do represent that, but, you know, that's their agenda and that's fine. You know, if people support that, and if you guys don't, then don't. That's it, plain and simple. I think just, you know, spitting on other people for what they believe in is not a better example of something. So
what about, like, would you tour with a band that has been a target in the past?
I don't know, because I'm not one to, like, judge people. I understand what you mean, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, if they were kind of viewed, I guess, or maybe they had certain things that would have maybe tied with that. No, I don't think I would not do that because of that. I would try to look deeper into things. And then if I see the guy is a real asshole and he is that type of person, well, then I just fucking punch him in the face and I don't care, you know? I'm not going to stop a tour because of that, you know what I mean?
On like a business aspect side of it, you know, like tours have been canceled, shirts were printed, visas were bought. Is that something that would, you know, would you be more wary to tour with this band because you're not sure if your investment is going to go nowhere, is more my thought. Yeah.
An investment is investment, regardless if you're touring with any band in the U.S. For certain, there's visas. You can get denied for anything, regardless if it's the band or not. You know, it's just it's a lottery ticket, man. You win or you lose, man. Motorhead. So I don't know, you know.
Why do you think there's so much negative attention on black metal or around black metal? So
I think it's tied to that more likely. Yeah. The media seems to, like, I guess, push out a lot more of the fact that maybe black metal represents what they consider it's representing racism or stuff that are tied to that. I mean, Marduk, man, their fascination with World War II doesn't make them, you know, Nazis. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that's just like the stir of the media is just stirring something like this.
You said, know, like Lemmy.
Yeah.
You said Motorhead for Lemmy's house was full.
He's wearing the Iron Cross
of Nazi paraphernalia.
And actually, if you know about the swastika, the actual swastika is a symbol that comes from native language way before, actually. It's all these symbolisms and like all these stuff, like, you know, some people will like, it's like, oh, they see that, they're like, they associate it with that. I'm like, yeah, did you know that people were using this way before they were using that? So it's like people view it as that because that's bad, you know? It's because people, I think, are not so open-minded and don't like really understand that like symbolism can go really deep and far, you know, and there's so much to that.
There's certain things that will just never come back, though, because of what the Nazis did, which is, you know, the swastika is not something that we can use anymore.
No.
That's never going to become popular
because,
again.
No.
The Charlie Chaplin mustache.
No, but yeah.
That's out. You know, you can never show up at a party with a Hitler stash anymore.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes sense. And I understand that, you know, and I respect people who are, you know, that think against that. But, I'm just saying, like, for example, like, you know, me as a person, like, if I see someone with that today, I probably know what he's associating with, because if I ask him about, you know, what does that mean, and I question him, he's probably not going to give me the answer that I know of, which is like, yeah, where does this come from? Where does this, yeah, what is this, you know? If I see a native guy wearing this symbol, I'm not going to be like, he's a Nazi. I'm going to be like, well, it's because he knows where it's coming from, you know, and I will think about it, because there's a deepness to it than him just representing a swastika in that way, because he'd be like, yeah, well, they stole it from us, you know, like other things, or, you know, so, yeah. But no, for sure, like, if you see someone today wearing a swastika, you're usually associated to that, which is stupid.
What do you think about metal sucks?
It sucks. Yeah, so I was just like, oh, Pestilence is coming. But because of metal sucks, apparently this tour is not happening. I mean, these kind of media things, like, it's all about the buck, you know, so they create stuff, stir things up, I guess, to make $1, you know, which is just horseshit. I mean, come on. Metal was never about that, man. It's always about the opposite of that, you know. No drama. It's such a drama-based kind of field, I guess, you know, because he's just like, oh, well, let's talk about this because it could just stir shit. Or, I mean, as simple as it is, okay? Think about it this way. He did cancel a tour. What are people doing? They're all talking about it. Mm-hmm. That's his goal.
Yeah, wait till he comes back, right?
Yeah. He wants people to talk about it. And the fact that he does something shitty, he doesn't care that if he did something shitty. People are talking about it. It makes him a buck. And that's, I think that's just fucking really stupid to think about that way. You know, you can't. Why? You know, metal has always been, I think,
community
against it, a community, and it's been it's a unit. You know, it's a brotherhood. It's family. You know, why do we need to bring this drama and all this kind of mundane, normal life guest stuff people do that?
It's stuff that would never happen, back in the 80s because we didn't have the internet to connect us all and to dig into people and to find that one post that guy wrote to that guy, and there was no paper trail back in the day, really.
Yeah, even in the early 90s, it was the good metal years. That's what I consider. Today it's different. I mean, with the internet and everything, I think a lot more people are getting access to things, messaging and spreading messages and spreading fake news. I mean, Wikipedia, I'd go read up something and I'd laugh because half the time they're usually wrong about it. They get some things that are accurate, but some things that are wrong. Someone's like, oh, well, what is it on Wikipedia? It says that we're formed in 2010. Technically, we're not. We were formed in 2009. It's just we kept silent for a year before we released the album. We were not talking to anyone. It was like in the basement recording, pre-producing the album, and we were just preparing to go in studio with Chris. That was it. But like, we technically actually were formed in 2009 and not 2010. So, just to give you an idea of what the internet does.
The accuracy of the internet.
The accuracy.
What does Erihma have coming up? You mentioned that there was a new album.
Yeah, we're working on material. We kind of had a transition and member changes. A former original member, Kathian Pat, he decided to step back, personal reasons. So we were just kind of silent, I guess, just trying to form everything. We've decided that the media seemed to talk about always us being a trio, and live was never a trio. But the core of the band has always been a trio, and I think that now we've decided that the band live is a trio just as much as the trio is in the recording process and the creating of the new album too. So we kind of actually doing that trio thing more and more. So we were working on the whole, how is it going to work for us or not. So we took some time to work that, and I've been writing tons of material. We've been writing lyrics. We just, we're just throwing down a bunch of stuff, and I think this is the first time that we actually took time, more likely, to do a record, and I think that it will show in the quality for sure. We as musicians are maturing. The music itself is maturing. So we're working on possibly an EP. We don't know if we're going to do a full length. A lot of things I would like to talk about, but we can't talk about, and eventually we will be out there and on the internet. But a lot of things are happening, but we usually keep silent, and once everything's ready, we just give it a big bang.
That's the way to do it. You said you want to be a trio, so that's you, a guitarist, and a drummer, and you want to do that live.
Yeah. We did that for Inferno.
You were just three dudes at Inferno?
Yeah. If you check on the internet and YouTube, you can get some Inferno live videos of us, and we were just three.
Awesome, and then with the samples and everything. It's covering up everything else.
Yeah, so I guess this is where people, can hear a lot more of the symphonic side that we talk about, that most people are like, where? They could probably hear keyboards. They're like, I hear keyboards, but like symphonic, like there's that orchestration and yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's happening right now, especially for the new material. I'm very, very, very excited for that. It's kind of a mold of everything we've been doing. It's going to be our fourth album. We got a good new manager helping us out with things, and yeah. Are
you guys finished with Victory? You're moving on now?
We're in the talks right now about what we're doing right now, so we don't know right now. We'll see. Right, we're still, as of what I know, we're still with them. So we'll see. Sometimes you can just give an album, they don't want to sign the album because they don't like it, and they just decide they want to close the contract, and that's it. Fine by me if they want to do that. But that's how it is. We'll shop somewhere else. We're not shy guys for that.
It's not as bad as it used to be, where they'll just take your album, put it on the shelf, and let you sit there and rot.
Yeah,
we don't want that.
Yeah. Like pretty much the Cryptopsy career.
Hey.
Central Media. Oh,
no,
God.
we survived.
You survived.
We survived. We moved on.
Yeah, you guys did all the way to the end.
Multiple solo releases as of now, independent releases. One more coming up.
But But I kind of, maybe one day we might be getting ourselves somewhere like that. I know there's a lot of work towards that, but I really respect the integrity that's put behind doing something like that, especially in how the music business is, at least how I'm seeing it today. It's not an easy field to get into.
It's hard to do independent because you need to surround yourself with a positive team that would take over all the roles that would be in a record label.
Yeah, there are people to do that. You just gotta do it at the right time.
That's right.
Yeah, so eventually you figure out who's the guy that can do this, who's the guy that can do that. But the beauty of it is the whole control of everything. You don't have someone writing emails to you or restraining you because you're like, hey, I have this fantastic idea, and they're like, yeah, well, there's no budget, so fuck you. And you're like, so your idea is just thrown down the drain, and you gotta take it into a personal financial matter, which is a bit more difficult. It's a lot of money when it comes to video clips and stuff like that.
That's right. Yeah, tell me about it. So, well, thanks for meeting with me today.
No problem, man.
Cheers for drinking beers with me.
Yes, great. It's great.
Vox and Hops.
Yeah.
It is early in the morning here because Gore does night shift.
Yeah, but I mean, beer, it's kind of like helping me to sleep, I guess.
This one will definitely help you.
Yeah, I'm tasting that.
Yeah, the Stout Imperial Russe, the Russian Imperial Stout from Dunham, is going to nurse Gore to sleep. All the best.
Hey, thanks everyone for listening to Vox and Hops today. I had a blast sitting down with Gore. It was early in the morning for him. Just to give you some context, he had just done an all-night shift, and I showed up at his house, and he graciously sat down with me, had a few beers. We sat back, we laughed, we chatted. It was fun. On the next episode, I'm going to sit down with Paul Ablaze, who was the singer of Blackguard. He is now the singer of a death metal band called Ages up here in Montreal. I've known Paul a really long time. It's always interesting to hang out with Paul. He always has a lot to say. If you have any suggestions, any comments, if you want to sponsor the show, shoot me a word, please, at matt@voxandhops.com. See ya.